Hello everybody, my name is Jonathan Allen. I'm an enterprise strategist at Amazon Web Services. And in the enterprise strategy team, I find myself working with the world's largest enterprises, helping them roll out and use cloud.
And I'm Eric Winter, a principal within our advisory practice at AWS. And I've spent the last 3 years at AWS working with executive teams of large enterprises on various stages of their cloud transformation journeys.
Thanks, Eric. So this first slide is always fascinating. You know, there are obviously thousands of enterprises, millions of customers using the platform. But actually, up until nearly a year ago, I was actually one of the logos on this screen. So for the last 17 years in my previous job, I worked for Capital One. And 3 years of that role, I was Chief Technology Officer for the UK division as we adopted AWS and moved at pace to use that platform in our business in a transformational way. Now, a large part of my role is actually working with enterprises around the world, typically looking at the paradigms of people, process, and technology. But what we see really is that actually the technology isn't the barrier. We really see, if so just looking at the server migration service, you know, there are thousands of VMs that have been migrated using the AWS server migration service. It's super easy and useful to use. We see around about 50,000 databases have now been migrated using the AWS database migration service, and that figure's actually gone up by 10,000 in just the last couple of months, which is astonishing growth. We also obviously have VMware Cloud now on AWS, certified fully with VMware. This is a great option for customers that want to move rapidly from their on-premise VMware estates to leverage EC2s in the cloud. And of course, we've got AWS Direct Connect, and recently we've had Direct Connect Global come online, the ability to map in VPCs from different regions except China. We also see Private Link emerging as an option for enterprises to bring in SaaS offerings into their VPCs. We also see snowballs, both the unit itself and the snowmobile truck. And the snowballs have gone around the planet a fair few times in their journeys. We also have the Amazon S3 Transfer Acceleration Service. And of course, we have both Kinesis Firehose and Kinesis Streams coming online. So really, it's the migration's not the challenge from a technology point of view. So when leaders look at the benefits of the cloud, both with cost and the ability to transform their business, the desire to move rapidly forward becomes apparent very quickly. And when you start talking to the engineers and developers in the organization, actually, people can start to get afraid of the migrations decisions. They think it's going to impact their careers. That can lead to fear and ambiguity for managers and senior managers in the organization. And then you can actually start to get some resistance. This is really natural when you look at how humans can naturally be afraid of the unknown. Until it's understood and known, there's resistance there. So as leaders in organizations and enterprises wanting to drive rapid adoption to the cloud to embrace the benefits, where does that really leave you? So it leaves you with a choice. Fundamentally, you can hire new. Now, we know as leaders that this can take a year for some senior leadership roles. It can take easily over half a year for developers and engineers. So this can take a long time to hire new. So you're left with train existing. It's less expensive, it's scalable, it's faster. So that's the right option, right? Well, actually, what we find in my experience of going through this journey is that training is just the tip of the iceberg. There it is, right at the top. We end up with this frozen middle. And this can be a real challenge for organizations. What we really need is a holistic approach, something that includes everybody. Because what you're messing with, or what you're changing when you move forward and go to cloud, is you're messing with people's motivation. And when you look at motivation and what really motivates us, it's kind of made up of three things. You've got autonomy, we've got mastery, and we've got purpose. So autonomy is, how do I have harmony in my life? How can I choose how I do my job, when I do my work, how I'm going to execute something? And mastery is, you know, I want to be really good at what I do. I want to be an expert. And then, of course, purpose is the ability to make sure that how we apply and what we do matters. It matters to the business. It matters to people that we interact with. That's really important. And these three things ultimately motivate us. So when you're changing away from what people have known and what you've had, maybe expert developers, expert on-premise engineers operating and building data centers, this is now changing. So we need to come up with an approach that's really going to address all three of those elements. So from my own personal story and time at Capital One, I was really sort of blessed to lean into this approach. And with the benefit of hindsight, what I'm now going to go through is a number of steps that Eric and I have seen work really well. And it really starts with step one. Step one is acceptance. This, the analogy here of the roller coaster is kind of really true. There's some fantastic highs on a cloud journey, there's some lows, and could be some curveballs coming at you. And it was really, as I had a little bit of a look at this, a very kind colleague sort of pointed out to me that, John, change curves really matter. So the second part of acceptance is actually a change curve. And I had the benefit of somebody really reminding me of this. My personal change curve is extremely short, but everyone's change curve is different. It's worth just briefly recapping on the change curve and some leadership strategies that you can execute on when going through it. So the first stage is absolute denial. When people hear of a pretty profound change that's going to affect them and their career, there's going to be some denial. And one of the great strategies on the right-hand side there is to create alignment, really help everyone understand that this is a holistic journey. Everybody's going to have a chance to go on this journey, retrain, see the power of cloud, and get a chance to use it. But actually, you can actually head straight into some frustrations, again, because you've not gone through the journey yet. People can get a little bit frustrated for it. So really over-communicate here. Let's make sure that, we've got coffee chats whenever we can, team meetings, town hall meetings. Really, I try to communicate whenever I could in any context, in any meeting, about the benefits of moving to cloud. But still, people can get a little bit sad. So it's really important to keep sparking motivation wherever you can, with engineers, with developers, with teams, with managers, with leaders, and actually try and get them to experiment. They've got to develop this new capacity, the new way, the benefits for the enterprise and the business. And actually then you get acceptance when people see the art of the possible in the new way. They move forward and they get on board. But these change curves can be differing lengths of time for different people, and it's super important as leaders we're kind of cognizant of different people who are going to have different change curves. So really step two, the first step is, I think, the AWS Technical Essentials course. It's a delightful sort of broad understanding and teaching on the art of the possible. And this one-day course, which can be held virtually at your premise or in a classroom context, is really a great course. It covers 18 services, and it's got in-depth coverage of the 10 core services: EC2, S3, EBS, IAM, auto scaling, ERB, RDS, Dynamo, and CloudWatch. So really, it gives you a delightful art of the possible. And after people have gone on this course, they're going to come away pretty excited of like, wow, I didn't know all these things were available, through APIs so easily, and people will start wanting to experiment. But actually, when you come on to say, stage three, step three, this is where, as leaders, we can really help, right? So, great quote from Andy: "There is no compression algorithm for experience." But heck, we're going to try and get people with hands-on as soon as we can. So, I think as leaders, giving people access to a sandbox account is a safe place for them to try things, to experiment. We can make sure that this account has a billing alert set on it, so it's going to be budgeted for. It's never going to hold production data. We can even delete it every night and shut it down because, hey, we're going to learn how to build infrastructure as code and infrastructure as pipeline so people can spin up their infrastructure the following day. But this really gives them access to the tools, and with over 100 services and accompanying features, this is where they can really, get their hands dirty with the technology, which is an awesome play. And then really what I did at this point in the journey was build my 2 pizza teams. Eric.
So what is a 2 pizza team? And in our experience, Jonathan experienced at Capital One what most enterprises experience, is that steering groups of 23 really don't work. The communications break down, the decisions by committee really elongate the decision-making cycles. Really what we found works is empowered teams of 8 to 10 people. 8 to 10 dedicated people who are cross-functional, ideally co-located, and who provide hands-on execution support of early cloud adoption initiatives. So what are they responsible for? They're responsible for the development of an iterative roadmap of execution, and they establish early standards by which cloud adoption will be executed and by which it will be governed. So let's take a look at the common roles we see enterprises including in this initial two-pizza team. The first is the product manager. This is the overall single-threaded leader, but they're partnered closely with another more technical leader in the early stages of this cloud team. The role is responsible for the business-facing efforts of cloud adoption and the initial adoption roadmap of cloud services that support those adoption use cases early on in the process. So if the product manager is deadly on the whiteboard, our technical leader or our lead architect is deadly on the keyboard. The tech counterpart to the product manager is really the translator of business or consumer requirements into technical capabilities. In these early days of adoption efforts, they'll be capable and responsible for hands-on delivery of solutions as well, and they build the initial catalog of cloud services. Though the bulk of the service builds will come from a cross-functional team of execution resources. So let's jump into what those look like. We'll start with representatives from our infrastructure. These roles provide a knowledge base of and backgrounds in current data center architectures and infrastructure services. In the cloud world, they work to build cloud infrastructure stacks, templates, golden images, and other repeatable artifacts for use and adoption of cloud by first movers and beyond, really. Key skill sets might include a Linux background, automation, networking capability. Also key are the ability to stand up new network ranges that integrate seamlessly between on-premises IP addresses and your cloud environment, the ability to configure VPCs, directory services, DNS, and a whole new IP address space. A super important point here is that lots of folks think these people go away. Actually, they don't. They're critical, and what does change in their responsibilities is that they get to move away from undifferentiated heavy lifting activities into more product development teams, which quite honestly most people find more fun. So as part of a product-focused team, these resources will work very closely with the next role on the cloud team. And those are our friends in security. As you're all aware, this tends to be the area of greatest scrutiny as organizations move into AWS, so it's important to have representation from this team as part of your initial cloud team. These resources will act as the enterprise security liaison for cloud service development and are typically responsible for that integration of enterprise security and compliance expectations and standards into the cloud services and offerings that get developed. So no more going outside of this initial cloud team, this empowered team, to ask for or seek approval. We're just going to put them right into the team. Once these secure and compliant cloud services are developed and exposed to the consumers who will use them to build applications and develop upon them, a common question we hear is, well, now that everybody has access to it, how do we ensure responsible and accountable consumption of cloud? And this is the job for our operations resources. So typically operations team members are responsible for the operating standards and cloud service development process. And the resources essentially ensure the repeatability of processes and cloud service adoption and deployment. So they're also responsible for ensuring those services are operational healthy. And what we mean by that, they establish more traditional service management capabilities like monitoring, alerting, logging, billing, and tagging management. Last but certainly not least is how do organizations ensure that the cloud services they build are going to be in demand? They're going to be relevant to those application and those dev teams that are going to consume them. And what we see in successful enterprises do is actually ask those people that are going to consume those services. You ask them and you invite them to the table as part of this initial team early on. So this category of resources is probably most critical to the early success of this cloud team and also those initial cloud service offerings. As you move more towards a customer-driven, product-focused capability, these team members are going to represent the consumers, the voice of those that are going to consume your cloud services, or in other words, your customer. And from what we've seen, they aren't going to be shy about telling you what they need and what they find valuable.
So at Capital One, when I was starting out and putting this team together, I actually had a team of about 22 people, and it didn't work. So we really put, our first cloud divisional CCOE team together with a mixture of these folks, and it really was transforming, because for the first time ever, we saw the possibilities of agile working. Because agile cadence is just really struggles the moment this team has to go out and get additional resource. And for the first time ever, this team could access the APIs. They didn't have to go anywhere else to move forward. So we put together this first team, And a top tip here, when you're doing this, don't change reporting lines. Keep reporting structures the way it is. What we're building here is a virtual team that's dedicated, no side of the desk activities. We're going to put them together in the same area, co-located together. Now, in my own journey at this point, there was probably a lot of opinions of what good cloud looks like, but I really wanted some data-driven expertise into the team to help accelerate both the team's learning and the journey. And it was this point that I went out and had a little look around. And, this is just a really small snapshot of these, 6 partners here, but there are literally thousands now of APN partners that are working and helping customers use and adopt AWS at scale. In my own journey, I actually selected CloudReach to come and help. And I actually was privileged that one of the great engineers came in and worked with this first team. We placed them in the team. And it was kind of like putting rocket fuel into the team. Suddenly, it was kind of an epiphany to me that I recalled that as a hands-on engineer myself, I liked actually working with my buddy on how we're going to solve this problem together, how are we going to code. So we actually did something really interesting. Pair programming is a concept from extreme programming, where you really take one computer, you have 2 monitors connected to that computer, 2 mice, 2 keyboards, and really 2 people then work side by side to develop code. And this pair programming is fantastic for training. But also, this individual brought in a lot of best practice and a lot of the previous almost like tool conversations of, are we going to use Terraform? Are we going to use Troposphere libraries? How are we going to build this? Kind of naturally fell away as this individual came into the team and was able to do pair programming based on their experience of actually what good CloudFormation code and continuous integration, continuous development looks like. And this was great to me because I really wanted the teams to be self-sufficient. I really didn't want to be dependent in the long term on a partner. I wanted, my own teams to be self-sufficient, and I wanted to bring in partners to help me scale in different ways in different parts of the journey. So we did this, and this was amazing. I was super excited at the results. And then this was really when it was time to make it real. So this is step 6. And really, this is where this team has now got to ship something important. Not mission critical, but it's still going to matter. It's got to be in production. It's not going to be a science project or a proof of concept. It's got to be something real. This could be your first microservice. This could be your first platform to host something. It's really got to be real. And really, what I see in a lot of enterprises is many can deliver something important and into production in, certainly less than 12 weeks. But if you're taking longer than 12 weeks, I think something's not going right in the first few steps. And it's definitely worth doing a quick retrospective just to kind of check back on yourself and go, hey, what's happening? So in my own journey, the team got there, they shipped something, it was awesome. And then I realized and asked myself the question as the leader is like, how am I going to scale this? This is now going to scale. I've actually got a lot of engineers that also want to work on this, but I wanted to do it in a structured way. So how are we going to scale this? So at this point, I did something which was pretty tough, right? So I actually split the team. And really, I took the team that was actually 10 people and put it into 2 halves of 5. And I basically brought in more engineers, and then I brought in another CloudReach resource. And heck, the goal's the same. Now they want them to get something into production. They're also doing the training course. And it works. It scales. You can bring more people in. And that's really reassuring to those that aren't quite ready to get hands on keyboards yet.
I think what John experienced, and that was one approach to scaling, but it was really a true to the patterns that we see in terms of how enterprises are building beyond that initial 2-pizza team. So in step 8, we've seen a couple of patterns, and we've seen the functionality of that initial cloud team break off into 2 areas of additional functionality. So we have the Cloud Business Office, which is actually the business-facing functionality, which we refer to as the Cloud Business Office. And then on the left there, we have the more technical product delivery / development functionality, which we'll refer to as the cloud engineering teams. Now, keep in mind, these are team names, not necessarily roles, right? The roles and job descriptions that your team develops would populate these teams. But as the cloud service expands, more people are needed to complete in the scope in a desired time. So the delivery of and the understanding of what services need to be delivered for our consumers. We don't, in an Amazon way, we don't see the size of the singular cloud team grow. Instead, we see the team grow horizontally in the addition of more single-family or single-threaded two-pizza teams that get developed, and additional teams get added. And these cross-functional product teams, again, take ownership of additional outcomes. So each team will have their own cross-functional product-driven outcomes that they're responsible for. And as this number of resources grows, so must their ability to confidently deliver, which requires the development of new skills and a path forward into greater successes with cloud adoption.
Thanks, Eric. So really at this point in the journey at Cat One in the UK, we'd scaled to a couple of teams. Things were going okay, pretty well. People were really interested, but I really wanted to accelerate and supercharge not only the expertise and all the teams, but I kind of wanted to supercharge, actually, how can we scale this? And with conversation with our sort of central colleagues, they were having a lot of success actually with certification. So we started really looking at, actually, I need to give every possibility and chance to my engineers and developers. So, I've given them some classroom training, I've given them a sandbox area, I'm doing pair programming with a partner, and I kept scaling and bringing in the partners. How can I really kind of help engineers, though, when they're on their own at night, really get that mastery part of motivation nailed? So we started to really encourage certification. Now, there's 7 exams available, and I actually think the Associate Architect exam is the very best place to start. And we started really encouraging it. And some of those progressive leaders, engineering leaders in that first team actually took the exam and passed and really enjoyed the challenge of doing it. And I think, an extra mechanism which you can help to give every chance to your engineers and developers is to maybe go and get a Cloud Guru enterprise license, which is something that Capital One did, to give everybody the ability to look at the videos, practice, train, and learn in their own time at their own pace. So we've got 4 things that they can draw on to go forward. And this was kind of amazing at this point, because we actually started to gamify it a little bit. But actually, as we were gamifying it, here was the really important figure. When we got to 10% of people certified, it actually became unstoppable. And we kind of took a step back, and this 10% figure is really important. It actually turns out that scientists at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in New York in July 2011 found that when just 10% of the population holds an unshakable belief, their belief will always be adopted by the majority. And this is true with technology as well. So when we've really got to that 10% figure, we saw that other teams got really interested in also getting certified and really interested in using it. And actually, we started to see a network effect, both a direct network effect of, hey, look, this team has now uploaded data into a S3 object. I can go and get that S3 data and use it over here in this product I'm developing because it's just the easiest thing to do. And you also get this indirect network effect, because suddenly you start getting known as a very progressive enterprise that's doing great things in cloud. And suddenly those people all the way back at the early steps when you were hoping to hire, well, those folks start applying to work for you because you've been known for this critical mass of expertise. So step 11, as a leadership team, it's super important to recognize these mastery achievements that your engineers and developers are achieving, and managers. And really, as a leader, I'd do everything I could to encourage this. In Capital One, we had a global lead ranking board of who had passed the most exams, which was awesome, and actually really gamified the process of getting certified. I'd give a special chair for the day for somebody who had passed the exam. I'd certainly call them out at a town hall meeting and give them high fives. And it really speaks to that mastery element that people are looking for, that recognition that they're becoming experts in their field. And it really scales beyond this 10%. And it's really a signal to those that haven't yet got certified of hey, why not? So super important. And it was actually at one of these town hall meetings when there was a few hundred people, and I was saying, look, it'd be really great if everyone can finish their certification, that sure enough, somebody in the front row said, hey, John, when are you taking the exam? And I didn't have a good answer for that. I was like, whoa, okay, when am I taking the exam? And it was at this point that I was like, hey, look, I need to take the challenge myself. So I went away, I did some of the practice labs. I used the sandbox environment. I did the videos. I took the exam. I didn't tell anyone I was going to take the exam. Of course I didn't. But actually I passed. And then I was able to go to the next town hall meeting, and the very last slide was, my PDF pass certificate. And that was like huge. That was like, oh my gosh, if all these engineers and developers around me are getting certified, and now the managers are getting certified, this is kind of like, I need to do this as well. This was like the final, driver to get people. So that was awesome. So these 12 steps, they certainly worked for me, and really the benefit of hindsight has allowed us to put together. But a question I often get when I go and speak to many customers is, tell me what your organization looked like. We get the 2 pizza teams, we see that, but what did the job families look like? So really I wanted to kind of close on this last slide, and these are some of the job titles that we actually moved to. And really it's worth saying that in the start of the journey we had a lot of job families, and we really kind of consolidated those down, so just a handful of new job families. And really, when you have these 2 pizza teams, of course, you're still going to have some technical interdependency where Team X is relying on Team Y. And really, a technical program manager is to make sure that these interdependencies are being managed, and that any third-party interdependencies are also being managed. So the TPM role is a great role. But also, we saw the infrastructure engineers that typically moved from on-prem. Well, they've now got AWS certified, and they were still really required in teams to help them, as Eric said earlier, develop product and no longer focus on that undifferentiated heavy lifting. So they were a lot happier. And then, of course, software quality engineers, we're still doing test-driven design. Software development engineers are required. And security engineers, security is obviously job zero for us all. That doesn't go away and is, embedded in all of the teams. And then also engineering managers running some of these 2 pizza teams also stepped in to now develop product, which was like super exciting. And one final thing is, we really removed the lid on how senior some of our engineers could go. So if you look at, Amazon, you have engineers like James Hamilton and Werner, and these are VP level engineers that operate, holistically and across multiple teams, providing technical guidance. So really challenge yourself to say, what are my levels for my engineering going to be? Have I got glass ceilings? Do I need to remove them and move forward? So when you take a look back across all these pillars, you've got knowledge, support, and structure. They really do work to get going and to scale how you operate in cloud. So thank you very much for your time. I'm going to leave you with one quote that I used on our journey, which is, all of your assumed constraints are debatable. And I want to thank you for your time. And now we're going to open it up to Q&A.